Hello everyone, this is Armstrong Williams on the right side. Armstrong. Don't curse, speak English. Armstrong. Virtuous society. Armstrong. I dare you to listen. Hey, turn it up. Hey. Armstrong. Get on the right side. Armstrong. Elevate your mind. Armstrong. I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side. Armstrong. Yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned into the most conservative of our brothers. Armstrong. The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Armstrong Williams Show. And thank you so much for joining us. How much do we know about European socialism and how it works and why you never, ever want it to come to America? You know, you hear people talk about we're becoming the United States of Europe, but do you really understand what that means? Well, let me just tell you, Lars Christensen is talking about this very important issue. He's from the Leadership Institute. His indictment of European-style socialism is stunning, and his command of history and free market principles make his dialogue quite enthralling. Let me welcome Lars to the show. Lars, welcome to the Armstrong Williams Show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, what is, and how did it come about, this so-called European socialism, and how does it differentiate from communism and capitalism? But let's talk about the pros and cons of this European socialism and how it's evolved over the last century.
You know, it's actually...
I just need you to speak up for me, please. Speak up for me.
Yeah, it's mainly evolved over the past 40, 50 years, I would say. If you look back to, say, 1960, a country like my own, Denmark, had then a tax pressure that was lower than the United States. And today we have a tax pressure that's almost double the United States and is, in fact, the world's second highest, being beaten only by Zimbabwe. But then again, that's probably not a model you want to pursue either. So it's really a case of different entitlement programs having exploded out of all proportions over the past couple of decades. And the problem about European entitlement systems is that they get very ingrained in the whole model. There's a strong institutional bias and organizational bias for actually continuously building out these programs because a lot of people live from administering them and from distributing them. So, and that's really one of the important messages that I've been trying to get across when I've been on my speaking tour here in the U.S. That as these programs continue to grow and grow, I think you have a similar issue with your food stamps here in the U.S. As these programs continue to grow and grow, actually an increasingly large proportion of the voter base becomes very dependent on government transfer payments. And once a sufficiently large number is in fact really more focused on what they can achieve from the state than on how private enterprise can generate the wealth to pay for these programs, that's when you begin to get into real trouble. And as an example, in my own country, about 65% of all voters are either employed by the public sector or on some kind of social transfer payment program. And that, of course, means that there's only 35% of the grown-up population left in the private sector. And it's pretty evident that a politician that wants to be in government, well, he's going to be more likely to cater to 65% of the voters rather than to 35% of them. And it just means that these programs keep growing and growing because that's basically the way you get to govern the country, to appeal to this large group of people living off the state.
EU countries remain free to determine what benefits someone is entitled to under their own laws, as well as the periods of work required to be entitled to unemployment benefits. And so the rules for calculating benefits and the duration of the benefits, for example, you might be entitled to 24 months unemployment benefit in your home country but only 12 months in a country where you live. It is very important that people understand this because the country from which you claim benefits is obligated to take into account all the periods you worked or contributed in other European countries as if they had been covered by its own laws. And there is a price you pay if they fail to do so. I mean, it's very interesting. And the benefit system in the country you're going to is most likely will be very different from what you're used to. And even as migrant workers, employed and self-employed, you and your dependents are covered by your host country's social security system, and its laws determines your benefits related to sickness, maternity leave, pensions, occupational accidents and diseases, death, on and on and on. Could you just get into that, because it's quite different from the United States?
Well, you're right that you have inside the EU, the 27 EU countries, you have in principle free movement of labor, or free movement even of living in these countries, and also you're right that this of course tends to favor people that are least inclined to work, are most inclined to find the countries where the benefit systems is the most attractive. But it's not just about unemployment benefits. I mean, after you drop off unemployment benefit, there's still a very generous entitlement program for long-term unemployed, and it's a lot more than that. It's early retirement schemes. It is different, people being judged to be unemployable for different reasons of medical or mental issues. There's a whole range of different programs well beyond just the unemployment side of things, right? Of course, there's a need for a well-functioning unemployment system for people that are temporarily out of work. But the problem is that there are so many other programs once those systems expire, if you will, that are very weak incentives to ever get back into the labor force unless you have a particularly strong bias towards wanting to work. And of course, if in a country like my own, you can receive in the neighborhood of $3,000 or $4,000 for not working, and in effect, your benefit of taking a let's say a normal job in a shop or something like that would not actually increase your economic outcome after the very high taxes you pay for funding this very generous entitlement system. You almost have to be a saint to actually take the job, and as obviously some of the lower end jobs are not terribly exciting jobs. If you can receive the same or sadly even more at times by being on a social transfer program, well then the outcome is pretty evident, and that is why in a country like my own, you have 65% of the entire adult population not working in the private sector.
Lars Christensen has received great recognition for developing Saxo Bank into one of the key players in the investment industry, both in Denmark and the international marketplace. You hit on some things. I've spent time in Europe. I do business in Europe. And so there are some things that I'm familiar with. And I certainly would not encourage American businesses to do business in Europe because it's so difficult to fire employees as if they have a position for life. But I want to get into this. Many European countries now have begun or have announced programs intended to reduce the growth of entitlement programs, in particular of these public pensions. And current costs are high, and the pressures will increase due to the population aging, as you mentioned, and negative incentive effects. And so, what I'd like for you to talk about, because there is really no single policy prescription that can solve all these problems at once. And reform elements include a freeze in the contribution and tax rates, and the sort of indexation of benefits to the dependency ratio, measures to stop the current trends toward early retirement, and sort of an adaptation of the normal retirement age to increase life expectancy and more reliance on private savings. Talk about how all this is playing out. Are they really moving toward reform to try to give relief to stop the collapse?
In my view, not. It obviously varies a little bit from a European country to European country. You must say, I think, give David Cameron credit, for example, for actually trying to implement significant reforms. But in most other European countries, I would say, if they are doing any reforms, they're very inadequate, and many of them are really just pretend to sort of qualify for various bailouts from the Eurozone and its institutions. So I don't think there are very many countries in Europe that are undertaking serious reform, and it is for the very obvious reason that you are, by doing so, depending on country, you are basically confronting and provoking anywhere from 45 to 65% of the voter base, and as you know, a politician is, some of them for idealistic reasons, but sadly most of them are there to have power and to govern, and you just don't get there by sort of seriously upsetting at least half of the voting base. So I don't think there is a lot of reform really going on in Europe today, and I think therefore we have those problems to deal with. The sort of the central message of the speaking tour I'm doing in the U.S. at the moment is really, well, you guys are not that much in trouble yet. You still have a chance to adjust into a more sensible direction before you get to the point of no return or very, very difficult to turn around when you have those huge groups of voters basically dependent on government payments. So I think the future
Lars,
of Europe
hold that
is very
point. Lars
difficult.
Christensen is our guest. We'll be back. Don't go away.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.RightSideWire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.RightSideWire.com.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933. Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
You're talking about dependent on government payment. Please continue, Lars Christensen.
Yeah, no, as I was saying, the message is really Europe has its own problems, and we're going to have to continue to deal with them and hope that we can find a way out. To be honest, I'm not very confident about the ability to find an easy or let's say a rational way out of the problems in Europe. So I'm pretty concerned that the eventual outcome will have to be through a collapse and a breakdown and potentially hyperinflation, a number of other areas. But I think the important message from Europe to the U.S. is you certainly do not want European socialism in your country, and you need to understand what it entails. You need to understand that in my country, 65% of the voting population are dependent on the state. 35% of them are catering for the rest of the nation in the private sector. Income taxes are 60%, capital gains taxes are 42%, sales taxes a minimum of 25%, car taxes are more than 200%. A gallon of gasoline costs $10. I could go on and on and on and on, and that is the cost on top of all the interference and interventionism and restriction of personal liberty that you experience in my country. And I think that's as un-American as it gets, and hence I think that you feel that at least some part of the U.S. political scene today see the European social welfare systems through somewhat romantic glasses, and I'm just in my small way trying to warn this is not romantic, and you won't like it, and actually you still have the possibility to go in a totally different direction, and that is a very important point, because you may not have that option if you go too far down the route. As I say, how are you gonna get 65% of the voters to in principle vote for the government to reduce payments to themselves? That is the problem once you have gone as far as some European countries have, and you don't really have a choice anymore. And but in the U.S., where you still have, I think also better values in the population, a true belief in freedom and personal achievement, the American dream, if you like. We don't have those kind of things in Europe. We have more a view of sort of a reverse JFK. Ask not what you can do for your country, but ask what the government can do for you, right? And that's really the what people get up in the morning thinking about. How do I maximize what I can get from the government, right? And you guys are not there yet, but it could look as if there's a risk you are heading that way. And I'll just warn you against the consequences, and particularly about the fact that you may not be able to reverse it if you go too far down that route.
When you look at our banking system and the mortgage crisis, what advice do you have for our countrymen?
I think that's a very complicated question.
It's not complicated for you.
It's intertwined internationally, the whole mess in the banking sector, and it's derived from. I'm not an apologist for banks, although I'm a banker myself. I think a lot of banks behaved incredibly stupid and incredibly irresponsibly over the past 10 years. But unfortunately, the reason they could do it was intervention in free market mechanisms. Things that took away responsibility for clients to think about what is a sound institution, where would I like to put my money. So a lot of the let's say the building blocks for this crisis was put in place by government intervention. Also the strong push in this country to expand ownership of your house in spite of not having the financial substance to really do that. I think some of the deposit insurance schemes, while probably being put in place in a good intention, have the very negative effect that you will choose any bank that offers you the highest interest because your money is insured by the government. And let me tell you one thing, the bank that offers you the highest interest is normally the bank that needs your money the most, and hence this leads to a very, very inefficient allocation of capital and leading to many of the problems we've had. So how do we get out of this mess? That's a very good question, and I think an area where it's not a question of a quick solution. It's a question of just as it took decades to build up the regulation that brought this mess, plus in many cases irresponsible behavior by banks. So then it's going to take decades to sort of unwind and get a more rational regulatory approach to banks and to deposit insurance schemes, etc. But it is also going to take a change of culture in the banks, which I actually believe is well on the way. I think many bankers would agree that some of the excesses of the past 10 years should not be repeated. However, in that business, customers and actors in the financial institution space will tend to find the ways of what can be done. And if you have regulatory or government interventions or schemes that lead to inefficient and impractical allocation of capital, lead to incentivize people the wrong way, you are going to end up in a big problem, as we have done. I tell you, if there had not been government regulation, you would still have had a crisis, because the nature of capitalism is that you have crisis from time to time. There's nothing wrong with crisis. That's a way that capitalism says this is a sensible business model. This is not a sensible business model, and it gets rid of the unsensible ones from time to time. But the free markets were not allowed to work here, and that's the only way that a bubble or a crisis can grow to this gigantic level. I think we're probably much worse off still in Europe, but that's a very long story. I think the only way to work it out is to slowly or as quickly as possible, but it's going to take a long time to simply start moving in the right direction, which means allocating more responsibility, not just to the financial institutions, but also the users of financial institutions to, over time, secure more adequate capitalization, secure more transparency in the banking system. You have to also say that because a lot of things got so complicated, a lot of things went off balance sheet just to even be able to do business again because of overly complex regulation, in my view. We need things back on the balance sheet. You need to know what the bank you're dealing with, what liabilities does it hold, what investments does it hold, and then you need to make a qualified decision on that basis. Do I want to deal with that institution? But if there's no consequence attached to that decision, I think, again, you have to be a saint not to just go for the highest interest rate, right? And that is, in with very big probability, probably the most dangerous place you're going, because nobody's gonna give you outrageously good conditions.
Let me
they need the money very badly.
Let me turn the conversation back to Europe. Lars Christensen is our guest. As his neighbors are being forced to retrench, and the future of the euro appears still imperiled, Germany's social services are running surpluses, helped by taxes that are among the highest in Europe, and difficult sacrifices its citizens have made to jumpstart their economy. I don't want to talk about what's in the headlines and on BBC and Sky News and CNN. What is going on behind the scenes and what Germany is forcing France and Spain and everybody else to do? Because we saw what the business and the rich, wealthy class is about to do in France. They're about to cause a major rift between themselves and Hollande because they don't like his stinking policies.
I agree that the whole Eurozone political dynamics are very complex, and of course the whole misery derives from the fact that when they put the euro in place, they didn't do it on a basis of a sound financial and economic structure. It does not make sense to have a joint currency if you don't share joint economy underneath it. And as that is a no-go, the European populations do not want to give up national sovereignty. They do not want to share economic future between Germans and Greeks. You know, there was never an option to put in place a political foundation, and thank God for that, because I don't think that would have been the right thing to do. But of course, now you're paying the price. So what is really going on? I mean, what is happening is that due to the different competitive natures of the member countries in the euro, some of these countries are very good at improving productivity. Some of them are less good, and some of them are pretty lousy, right? Where Greece falls into the last category and Germany falls into the first one. In the old days, you could solve that. The Greeks had their drachma. Every couple of years, they would devalue it by 10%, and they would be back on a level playing field because their goods would be cheaper through devaluation rather than structural competitiveness. But it really works out the same way. So that's been going on now for the better part of 15 years, which means that a country like Greece has lost at least 40-50% competitiveness vis-a-vis Germany. So Greece has an artificially high currency. They should have their own currency, and it would be much lower today if they had. Germany, on the other hand, has an artificially low currency and have benefited tremendously from this. This should not be forgotten when people are asking Germany to pay bills. That while, of course, they don't like the concept of bailing out the other countries, they have benefited tremendously from it, also vis-a-vis the United States and China, because for sure the Deutschmark would have been at least 30% higher if it existed today, meaning that the U.S. and other trading nations would have been much more competitive vis-a-vis the Germans. So what's going on there now? I think I've always been very negative on the euro, and I think we are really at the beginning of the end here. I would be very surprised if Greece was still in there in a year or two's time. It might take a little bit longer, but it can't go on like this, because no matter how much you transfer payments, actually that even worsens your competitive development, because now you're dependent more on money coming in from somewhere than actually trying to improve your industry. So it's even going to get worse.
Just hold that point, because we want to come back and wrap up with our guest, Lars Christensen. I'm Armstrong Williams. We're talking about a case study in European socialism, how it works and why we don't want it in our country.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Sorry about that, Lars. You know, our breaks are computerized. We have no choice but to get out. But continue what you were saying, please.
Yeah, I'll continue the line of thought. Basically, the increasing uncompetitiveness between, structurally defunct countries like Greece and very well-functioning countries like Germany. That'll go on and on. And Greece is the worst case, but certainly Italy and Spain and Portugal are not far behind. And eventually even France, particularly with a new president they have, will also get into trouble. So the euro is doomed to continuously cause stresses between the member countries as we go forward. And there's two solutions really. One is to break up the euro, which is the more likely in my view. And the second one is to push through this underlying change of the foundation, so you really integrate the economies more. But as European populations are rightly very, very opposed to this will not be something you can do in a democratic fashion. That normally doesn't stop the EU Commission, though, so they will try to push through as much as they can under the radar, like a banking union, stability pacts, and all these, and of course some of the enormous programs that the ECB runs for bailing out some of the sovereign debt in many of the countries. So it's going to go either towards a total political union that is zero. I don't think one population in Europe really backs that. So that would have to be in an undemocratic and pushing it through fashion. And I think that will probably not be possible and shouldn't be possible. And the other version is that the euro, if not explodes, then at least starts to sort of get rid of some of the peripheral countries, and perhaps a central eurozone of Germany, France, the Benelux countries, maybe Austria, could exist, because these countries are closer to each other in economic performance, closer in culture. But for sure, the idea of an ever-expanding euro taking on board more Eastern European nations, and that's just a non-starter. And in my view, the quicker they deal with this issue, although it's going to be immensely complicated and chaotic and problematic, it's going to get even worse if you don't deal with it, because at some point you do have to do it. But it could take years, because there's a lot of political capital invested in this. There's a lot of the big leaders and big countries in Europe that have supported this for a very long time, and really I would say the only people of significance that stand out against this is the UK, and God bless them for that, because they are very needed to for somebody substantial. My country is a country of 5.6 million, so nobody really cares about what we think in Europe, but at least David Cameron is standing up for a more rational line, and I think we can't solve all of this world's problems, right? I see it like that. In my country, we need to stay out of the Eurozone. We need to find ways, together with the other 10 EU countries that are not part of the Eurozone, how do we somehow stand up against all the demands and costs that the Eurozone is trying to put upon us? And in the U.S., I mean, I just think you have a very easy solution, and that is don't go down that route and reverse course if you are on your way down to that route.
Well, look, I cannot thank you so much for joining us. How can we get more information about you?
You can go and visit my website at www.saxbank.com.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. You join us, Michael. We appreciate so much Lars Christensen for what you do. We appreciate your insights on the case study in European socialism and how it works, and why we don't want it here. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have you back again.
Thank you very much for having me.
All the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Michael Uslan is the originator and executive producer, along with his partner, Benjamin Melniker, of the Batman franchise of motion pictures. In his 36 years in the film and television industry, he has been involved with such projects as National Treasure, Constantine, and countless animated projects. His projects have won Oscars, Golden Globes, and Emmy Awards, and he is the author of The Boy Who Loved Batman. His autobiography now in bookstores and at Amazon.com. My producers tells me that he's on his cell phone. He has 130 miles to go. We don't plan to talk him through those 130 miles, but we're certainly glad to have him on. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm abandoning my policy because of such accomplishments, and I love The Dark Knight. It is rare we talk to somebody via telephone, but we're glad to have you. We really don't have a choice, because I think this is such a remarkable story. Now, where are you driving to?
We are en route to Bloomington, Indiana, Indiana University, which is where I taught the world's first college-accredited course on comic books back in the early 1970s. And as kind of payback for setting me on the road to Batman in my career, I've recently donated 45,000 comic books from my comic book collection to Indiana University's Lilly Library, which is its rare book library.
What is your connection to Indiana University?
I went to Indiana. I got 3 degrees there, my undergrad in history, my master's in urban education, and my JD in law. And but we broke ground. We made a little history when I taught the world's first accredited college course on comic books to let the world know that comic books are a legitimate American art form as indigenous to this country as jazz, and that the comic book superheroes are a modern-day mythology. My contention being that the ancient gods of Greece, Rome, and Egypt all still exist, except today they wear spandex and capes.
You know, I've thought about that. I've read all the classics. I won't get into that now. But, you know, that does bring me to something. How important is narrative to branding?
I think it's extremely important. I think you've got to have a story to tell. And not only that, I think you've got to believe in your story. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe in your product, if you don't believe in the story behind it, then I think it's impossible to successfully get out there and develop a branded franchise. You know, I had to take the Batman that horrified me as a kid because I was such a Batman fan and a total comic book geek that when I was a kid and it came on TV, I was just horrified that the whole world was laughing at Batman. And as a true Batman fan, I just wanted to show the world what the true Batman was like. The guy created in 1939 as A Creature of the Night by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. And that set me on a mission that I was able to finally accomplish later in life, which was to take something most of the world knew as a pow-zap wham pot-bellied funny guy and turn him into a dark Avenger. A real creature of the night, gritty and true to his original concept.
You know, I am so fascinated. I haven't finished reading all the book, but I read most of it. How did this all get started that the Dark Knight came to the big screen? I mean, this is just, as they say in the jacket of your book, who in the world is lucky enough to have a grand dream, then to enter it, embrace it, and have it become part of their life? You're just such a blessed person, man. And how do you do that? How does it get to the big screen? How does that work? I mean, look, I love the Batman series, and I loved The Dark Knight. I was not disappointed.
Well, that's fantastic, and I thank you so much for that.
Oh, you hear it all the time. Come on. You hear it all the time.
Well, the story really begins, and I've lectured now since The Dark Knight opened up at 70 different universities. And in each time I tell the kids that if you have a passion in life, if you have a dream, a driving passion, and it's never too late to get out there and try to discover what that passion might be. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later because my biggest influence in my life in that was my father, who was a stonemason and loved what he did. But you've got to get up off the couch. You know, I've been out there and I see in so many kids and I say kids, so many people under the age of 30 who seem to have some misguided sense of entitlement, as if the world owes them something, as if the world's going to come to them. And I'm trying to tell them, get up off the couch, follow your passion, have a high threshold for frustration, because as you knock on doors until your knuckles bleed, they're going to slam in your face, and when they do, you really only have 2 choices. You go home and cry about it, or you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, you go back and knock again. And my story, which is really about a blue-collar kid from Jersey who didn't come from money and couldn't buy his way into Hollywood, who didn't know anyone in Hollywood, who had no relatives in Hollywood, I was able to make my dreams come true because I knocked on doors until my knuckles bled, refusing to give up, always believing in myself and believing that the dark version of Batman would one day be a big success on the screen.
How did you get it financed? Who was that person that realized your dream and helped you make it reality? And, I mean, the writing is just fantastic, man. The writing, the special effects, the storyline, the suspense. You know, as a writer, I don't always want to figure out what the next scene is or what the outcome is. Because, in most things you can always figure it out, but in The Dark Knight, you cannot figure that out.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a two-part question. The first part really is that how does a kid, meaning myself, in his 20s, who is just a blue-collar kid, how does he buy the rights to Batman? I mean, how does that happen? How on earth does it happen? And the real reason was because nobody else on this planet wanted them. Everybody thought Batman was dead after the TV show. Nobody was interested in Batman. Even the president of the comic book company, when I went to buy the rights, said, save your money, don't do this. This is a big mistake. Since Batman went off the air on TV, the brand is dead. Batman is as dead as a dodo. And I kept saying, yeah, but if we do it in this dark, serious way, we create something brand new, like the world has really never seen before in movies. And then
Michael, hold that point.
Question,
our breaks are computerized. Let us go to a break, and we're coming back to you seriously.
Okay.
Michael Uslan, the true story of how a comics-obsessed kid conquered Hollywood to bring us The Dark Knight to the silver screen.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.RightSideWire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.RightSideWire.com.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Whether it's their impact on prison guards, law enforcement officials, business executives, employees, or marriage and relationships, Lored is dedicated to changing the individual and institutions around the globe. Lored's diverse network and training courses can help provide you with the tools you need to both wisely and confidently lead, manage, and supervise yourself as well as others. Lored Business Network, a proven system for achieving success in your business and life. Please visit their website and begin this life-lasting journey with Lored today, www.lored.org.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong-Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong-Williams.
Michael, please continue.
Well, you got to give credit where credit is due.
Well, no.
When they were telling you about the Dark Knight trilogy.
No, Michael.
We're really talking about Christopher Nolan.
Michael. When we were going to break, you were talking about how they said the series was dead. It was over. Don't waste your money. Please continue.
It was completely over. And what I did was, at that time, I raised money privately from people I knew, friends and family, doctors, lawyers, dentists, anyone I could find who could believe in me, believe in the vision I had for this. And then I had the greatest partner in the world that I found, Ben Melniker, who was a legend in the movie business. He's my dad's age, and ran MGM in its Tiffany days, putting together deals for movies like Ben-Hur, Dr. Zhivago, and 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it took 6 months to negotiate the deal and purchase the rights from DC Comics. We finally did that. I went out to Hollywood, sure that all the studios would line up at my doorstep, and every single studio, every single one, turned me down. They said it was the worst idea they ever heard, that you can't make serious comic book movies, you don't make dark superheroes, and nobody's ever made a movie based on an old television series. That's never been done. So it was rejection after rejection, and it wound up, Armstrong, taking me 10 years from the time I bought the rights to Batman till we got that first movie with Tim Burton, with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton made. 10 long years of nothing but rejection.
Wow. And then once they really caught on and they understood, and after that first movie, what happened?
Well, with the first movie, turned the world around. I mean, it was just different. It was impacting not just the box office, but it was impacting the culture. It was transcending not only borders, but cultures around the world. That summer of 1989, in New York, you couldn't walk through Times Square 25 steps without seeing someone wearing a Batman hat or a Batman T-shirt. And when you talk about a brand, the posters, the ads, they didn't even have the name of the movie on it initially. It was just the oval, the gold oval with the black bat. That was all we needed, iconically, to let the world know that Batman was back, and it was a different kind of Batman.
Who is Batman, and why is Batman so dark, and why do people are always drawn to such darkness?
Well, I think the answer begins not so much with Batman per se as it does with Bruce Wayne. It's really all about the human story of Bruce Wayne. Batman is one of the very, very few superheroes who has no superpowers. And I've always contended that his greatest superpower is his humanity. And that's a reason that kids, adults, people from country to country and culture to culture can identify with him because he's human. And he has to use his brains in order to ultimately succeed. And when you look at the primal origin story of Batman, here you have Bruce Wayne as a kid who sees his parents murdered in the streets in front of his own eyes. And at that moment, in a belief that one person can make a difference in this world, he sacrifices his childhood and makes a commitment. It's a commitment to get the guy who did this and get all the bad guys, even if he has to spend the rest of his life walking through hell in order to honor that commitment. And in doing so, he becomes a legend. He becomes an urban warrior. And that story is just so primal, I think it appeals to people all over. And I have to tell you one thing. I was privileged enough to speak to the cadets of West Point, 4,500 cadets, a month before they left for Iraq and Afghanistan, and to tell them that they are Batman because they believe one person can make a difference in the world, because they've made a commitment, even if they have to walk through hell in order to honor it, and that they are Batman. And they went crazy. It became their clarion call. It was a wonderful, wonderful moment.
Why are superheroes so appealing to our psyche?
I think it goes back to the ancient days of folklore. If you really stop and think about it, it's still the ancient traditional stories of brave warriors against demons, wizards, and dragons, but it's all told in modern-day dress. As I like to say, the Greeks called him Hermes, the Romans called him Mercury, and I just call him the Flash. The Greeks called him Poseidon, the Romans called him Neptune, but I just call him Aquaman. So it really is rooted in the ancient traditions of storytelling and heroism and moral and ethical codes that we follow. And to this day, when I talk to not just baby boomers, but people from virtually every generation, if they grew up reading comic books like Superman or Spider-Man or Batman, they're the first ones to tell you it's had an impact on their own personal moral and ethical codes. And that is something truly amazing and very positive.
You know, I'm going to tell you something that I never thought about before. You know, I read the book and I saw the things about your kids, Sarah, and your son, and the Swamp Thing, the babysitter. And, you know, I just, you know, I think sometimes we have to think beyond ourselves. You know, I mean, a lot of kids love imitating these mighty superheroes battling the bad guys and flexing their superpowers. You, however, maybe less than thrilled about the idea of the running, the jumping, the fighting. But and this is what I want to ask you. I actually think from a psychological standpoint, superhero worship can be beneficial. Kids are pretty powerless and vulnerable, so pretending they're superheroes is one way for them to gain a sense of confidence and competence in a positive way. I mean, you think of it this way. We all want to feel like we're doing good in the world, but 6-year-olds don't necessarily understand how a doctor, a scientist, even their father can have an important impact. And so the concept of their work don't resonate very well yet. And a superhero, however, can hold up a building, save hundreds of people. A kid can, and they also do the good. They embrace the good. They get rid of the bad guys. They don't do the bad things. And even if they do the bad things, they correct themselves because their power comes from being good.
I couldn't agree with you more, Armstrong. It really is true. Everybody needs somebody to look up to. We all need our heroes. In real life, those heroes are very fallible. I had to explain to my son why, when he was growing up, some of his big baseball heroes or football heroes wound up being arrested for a drug charge or something. That's a difficult thing for a parent to try to explain to a kid and give a child perspective. Superheroes can be a very, very positive experience in every way, shape, or form. In the old days, many comic book readers were kids who were really isolated, who were not the first ones picked at a little league game to play, and they were often those who were kind of left out, and they found acceptance and they found something positive in the pages of the comic books. From the superheroes to the classics illustrated. And today it's a little bit different. Now comic books have become cool. They've become graphic novels. There's a worldwide adult audience for it. They're the basis of our biggest blockbuster movies and hit video games and top TV series and animation, and even to the point where it's impacting fashion. So, in the end, all of us comic book geeks have won this battle, and that's pretty incredible.
I actually find myself contemplating the Dark Knight trilogy as it pertains to superhero movies as an entity and why it proves a lot of theories that strain from the comics isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, if you look at the work of Christopher Nolan, which is Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, it's one trilogy. It's one story. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And what this genius Christopher Nolan has done has been to raise the bar for all comic book movies. When you walk out of one of his films, you don't have to say simply that was a great comic book movie. At last you can say that was a great film. And let's use one example in particular. I love how so many of the critics and the pundits have acknowledged the Dark Knight trilogy as one of the most important film stories post 9/11. And that it has thematic weight and emotional resonance. And the scene everybody keeps talking about occurred in The Dark Knight when people were on a ship, and they had an opportunity to save their own lives if they would press a button and blow up another ship filled with people. And they had to make a moral choice. And as I've lectured around the country, I keep hearing from people that in the darkness of that movie theater, no matter who they were with, they quietly made their own moral decision as to what they would have done, what they would do if they were in a situation like this. Answering that awful question, what happens when you need to make a moral choice and the choice is between bad and worse? And for a comic book superhero movie to resonate like that in people and to become that thematically important to people, I think is an incredible, incredible accomplishment and part of the essence of why these movies are so successful around the world.
Well, look, I must tell you, I cannot thank you enough, not just for the book, but the values and example of your parents and how they still live. though they are deceased, they still live in you and the things that you become, and you pass it on to your children, because you remind us the importance of family. It is truly the foundation of all of our successes, and in many ways our failures are like thereof.
It's very true, and in the story of Batman, it's Alfred and Commissioner Gordon who are his anchors to his humanity, who are in fact his family. And it is that concept of family underlying the humanity of Batman and the Dark Knight trilogy that I think is a real important statement to make, and I hope people take away that when they see these films.
Michael, you hear the music. Perfect timing. Like Hollywood. Thank you, and safe travels to Minnesota.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You too now.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org. Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
The sweet potato pie. Even the keenest taste buds will tell you the best food on the planet. Large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So get to Henry's at 5431 Indian Head Highway, Oxon Hill, Maryland, or give us a call at 301-749-6856.
Soul food. Henry's Soul